1895, the Sultanate of Zanzibar sits as a British protectorate, continuing to operate under the guise of de jure independence, propagating its position as a globally renowned exporter of spices. However, less than a year later, in August 1896, a state of war exists between the United Kingdom and the Sultanate of Zanzibar. So, how did this come to be? Well, to understand how this came about, we have to provide some context and go back a few centuries. Although having initially been influenced by African and thereafter Indian and Arabic culture, the island of Zanzibar first became a European possession in 1503. It formed a part of the Portuguese overseas empire for nearly 2 centuries, eventually becoming an overseas territory of the Omani Sultanate. Going into the 18th and 19th centuries, the island would evolve to become a major coastal hub for slavery, developing a reputation for particularly brutal practices. However, internal divisions within the ruling Sultanate family culminated in the separation of Zanzibar from the Omani Sultanate under the rule of Majid bin Said. The island also became an important trade outpost for spices and gradually became a prized strategic port. However, Britain, motivated by trade and its fight against slavery, began to informally influence the then Sultan of Zanzibar, Bargash bin Said, much to Germany's dismay. Germany, being late to the imperial game, was seeking to consolidate upon its holdings in Eastern Africa. To the British, this was unacceptable. To get around this, in 1890, negotiations were held between Britain and the German Empire, resulting in the signing of the Heligoland-Zanzibar Treaty. The treaty essentially exchanged an archipelago of British-held islands off the coast of Germany for the right to influence Zanzibar. Over the following years, although Zanzibar retained its sultanate, its power was strictly nominal and subject to the whims of British officials. The Sultan, between the years 1893 and 1896, Hamad, fostered pro-British sentiment, much to the disdain of his nephew, Khalid bin Bargash. This uneasy tension culminated in what many believe was the assassination of Hamad by Khalid, whereupon Khalid seized power of the Sultanate. To look at it from the Zanzibarian perspective, the European powers had slowly stripped away the frontiers of the Sultanate's domain, and Khalid had deemed the reduction of Zanzibar's sovereignty to that of a mere protectorate as being unacceptable. Conversely, to the British, having an anti-British sultan in a British protectorate was not acceptable. Khalid's ascension to that of sultan violated the conditions of Zanzibar's protectorate status, this condition being that the British consul approved of the current sultan. During this era of expansionism, the secession of Zanzibar from imperial control could signify the fragility of the British Empire, an unacceptable prospect. As such, the British initiated military preparations. Just 2 days after Khalid's seizure of the Sultanate, an array of British military ships had assembled with their guns firmly aimed at the Zanzibarian palace. An ultimatum was given on the 26th of August 1896. Khalid had been asked to vacate the palace. Having failed to comply and having failed to gain recognition as a legitimate sultan by any of the Western consuls, it quickly became evident that Khalid was politically isolated. The sultan was also severely outgunned, with the British possessing 3 cruisers and 2 gunboats. Conversely, the Sultanate had only a royal yacht, HSS Glasgow, a ship that was previously a gift to the Sultan from Queen Victoria herself. It had only cost $32,500. Not much when you think about it. On the 27th of August, at 9:02, the British Commanding General, Lord Matthews, initiated the bombardment of the Sultan's palace. Brief resistance was met from HSS Glasgow, which was quickly shelled and sunk. The war itself ended at 9:40 am, having lasted approximately 38 minutes, being the shortest war in history. Khalid and the ruling elites fled to the German consul and were granted political asylum. In the UK, the press reported the war in a factual, albeit dismissive tone, stressing the futility of the Sultan's resistance. The war's outcome cemented Britain's imperial hold of the region, with only Germany having a proximal presence. It is arguable that the war epitomises gunboat diplomacy and the technological disparity between the African and European powers. exemplifying how this gap could be misused. Although not detracting from this, the war could also be considered a testament to the UK's commitment to enforce the abolition of slavery, albeit this morality is tainted with Britain's commercial interests in the region. What do you think? If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and comment down below, and as this is my first video, please subscribe to help the channel grow.